Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, Cardiomyopathy and Genetics. Tonight, we will learn about cardiomyopathy and genetics, getting the facts and saving lives. We're just going to wait for some additional folks to jump on here. We're going to give them a few seconds. So hang on tight and take a look at some of our new graphics. This is very exciting stuff. We're launching a new website tonight and all kinds of great stuff happening. So thank you for joining. I'm going to give people a few seconds to join. Wonderful. Numbers are going up. That's great. Again, I'll just give it another few seconds. We have hundreds of people registered for tonight's webinar, which is so exciting. We're thrilled. And so without further ado, I'm going to get rolling. For those of you who don't know, I am Jan Rock. I am the Director of Information and Education for the DCM Foundation, and I will be your host tonight and moderator. And tonight's webinar is Cardiomyopathy and Genetics, Get the Facts and Save Lives. And this is the launch of the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium. We're thrilled. As you can see, this is the new tagline: myself, my family, my legacy, genetic cardiomyopathy awareness. So let's get rolling. Next slide. And I have Justine helping behind the scenes tonight, which is fantastic. Again, thank you for joining. All participant microphones are on mute so that we can clearly hear the speakers. If you do have questions, we ask that you use the Q&A feature at the bottom of Zoom. Next slide. We will have an open Q&A session following tonight's presentation. So again, just drop your questions in there. And just a reminder, all microphones are on mute. And so let's get rolling. Wonderful, thank you. So first, we're going to do a quick poll. Justine, if you could push the poll forward. We'd like to know who is attending tonight's webinar. Are you a cardiomyopathy patient, a family member or friend, a medical professional, or an industry professional? And we'll give folks a few seconds to answer. This is always really helpful, kind of gauge and see who's on. I had a number of people email me saying if they weren't able to attend live, would they still get a recording? And the answer is yes. Wonderful, great. If we could end the poll and share the results. Wonderful. Looks like we have a nice mixture, but certainly, almost half are cardiomyopathy patients, and then a nice balance of family friend, medical professionals, and industry professionals. Wonderful. Great. Okay, well, let's continue on tonight. We're so thrilled you could all join us. First, I would like to introduce you to tonight's first speaker, Greg Roof, the Executive Director of the DCM Foundation. Many of you may have seen him on prior webinars. If you've not, Greg's story is that he was diagnosed with DCM almost 10 years ago and required an ICD. Genetic testing then revealed that he has 3 mutations that can cause DCM, and a number of his relatives also carry genetic mutations that can cause dilated cardiomyopathy. In 2017, Greg launched the DCM Foundation. And after worsening heart failure on July 15th, 2021, Greg thankfully had a successful heart transplant. Since then, he's been working hard. In 2022, with the support of 9 cardiomyopathy patient partner groups, leading biopharma companies, and several important partners, Greg and the DCM Foundation launched GCAC, as we call it, which is the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium, with a goal to bring awareness to the genetics of cardiomyopathy. Greg lives in Ohio with his wife of 30 years, and together they have 3 grown children and 3 adorable grandchildren. Next. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Greg. Greg, take it away.
Thanks so much, Jan. And really, really excited to be here and for the launch of the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Campaign and Consortium, or GCAC for short. It has been 15 months in the planning, and there are a ton of people that we can thank for this, and that we really hope will make a difference for patients and the medical community dealing in genetics and cardiomyopathy. Next, please. So what is GCAC? It's being organized by the DCM Foundation, but it's comprised of 9 total US cardiomyopathy patient groups, patient support groups, many of which you are affiliated with. And it's also supported by a number of leading biopharma companies that have an interest in genetics and cardiomyopathy, and really designed to, again, spotlight, highlight the important role that genetics plays in cardiomyopathy, because it's not really well known in the general community, it's not really well known in the patient community, and it's not really well known by cardiologists, quite honestly. So by launching this campaign, we really hope that we can save lives, which we'll talk about in a minute, and advance therapies and treatments for cardiomyopathy. We're going to show you the website a little later. We're going to show you some information sheets or infographics that you can share with people. The one thing I hope you learn a lot tonight, but then I hope you become advocates and ambassadors for GCAC, really to spread the word to other patients and to the medical community. Next, please. So here are the people involved, but not all the people are involved, but the major groups. You can see our corporate sponsors. Without them, we would not be able to pull this off or fund the campaign. And not only the corporate sponsors, sponsored us financially, but they were also very helpful in lending expertise and information, which was really good. You can see there's 9 US patient partner groups. We've added Cardiomyopathy UK and Global Heart have been there, but you can see the 9 US groups that are involved. Again, not only they're promoting this, they lent a lot of great information, a lot of expertise. We really appreciate them. And then we also have 3 wonderful partners: the American Association of Heart Failure Nurses, the Cardio-Genomic Testing Alliance, and the National Society of Genetic Counselor, whose executive director, Megan Carey, you will hear from in just a few minutes. Next, please. Thank you all for your support. So why are we doing this? What's the problem, and what solution are we trying to create here? So first and foremost, the problem, we know now that about 50% of cardiomyopathy has some type of genetic basis. I'm going to give information. I am not a cardiologist. I'm not a geneticist. I'm not a genetic counselor. So do not take medical advice from me during this, but a lot of experience dealing with patients and families, and looked at a lot of the research. So, you look at 10, 15 years ago, the number might have been 20%. They thought genetics had a causal effect on cardiomyopathy. We look 10, 15 years from now, that number is going to be greater than 50%. But right now we're saying that about 50% of cardiomyopathy has some type of genetic basis. But a recent study by United Healthcare and Invitae showed that only about 1% of cardiomyopathy patients get genetic testing. There's a huge gap there. So there is 49% of the population, that are diagnosed with cardiomyopathy that aren't getting tested and should be tested. Huge problem. We're trying to really narrow that gap. And what kind of solution are we trying to create with the campaign? Well, we want to save lives from many cardiomyopathy patients, family members. Well, how do you do that? First of all, if you have a certain type of genetic cardiomyopathy, like my family, which was lamin A, it can also cause dangerous arrhythmias. Not only does it cause heart failure and muscle damage, it causes dangerous arrhythmias. So when I was immediately diagnosed at Cleveland Clinic and the Ohio State University, they said, Greg, you need an ICD. You may go into dangerous arrhythmias, which could cause sudden death. So knowing that I had the lamin A gene, one, I got an ICD placed by Ohio State University here in Columbus, Ohio. And, that actually saved my life on several occasions. They also are following my children that have the genetic predisposition, the genetic mutation, so that if they start to see any signs of muscle weakness, or any irregularities in their ECGs, they will know to create, they can start creating drug therapy and potential ICD. So that's important. Knowing the genetic component of your cardiomyopathy could save you and your family members' lives. Very important. The second thing is, when we started the foundation, we went to a lot of academic researchers in cardiomyopathy. We went to a lot of the biopharma companies and said, how can we help you? And they said, basically, there are quite a number of genes, we'll show you on the next slide, that deal with, that show the different genes in cardiomyopathy. And so given the number of genes, in order to create genetic therapies, there needs to be a much greater number of people tested. Thus, we're trying to greatly increase that 1% genetic testing. And also then, after testing, raise their hand to be in research studies and clinical trials, really, really important. So those are the two things we're trying to achieve with this campaign. Next slide, please. So here are the known genes associated with cardiomyopathy. This is pretty old. As you can see, I think there's probably 70 genes or so. One thing you need to understand is that what they've learned about genetics and cardiomyopathy, is like an iceberg. It's about 20% that you can see above the surface, is about 80% below the surface. So as more and more research is done, I think the genes will be added, they'll be modified. Mostly the number of genes will probably grow. And the understanding of how they interact, but you can see the different types of cardiomyopathy. You might have hypertrophic or dilated ARVC, congenital heart disease, but then you can see how they're interrelated. Some genes have multiple function, things like that. So really, it's fairly complicated. And with more research, I believe it's going to get more complicated. The one thing I would like to do right now, there really is a lot of interest by researchers and biopharma companies in genetics and cardiomyopathy. And that is growing rapidly. But what I really would like to give a shout out to right now are the early researchers that pioneered this field. There's so many people involved. I can't name them all, but I do want to co-founder of the DCM Foundation, board member, Dr. Ray Hirschberger at Ohio State University, was one of the first researchers in this, I think over 30 years ago. And really would like to give him a shout out for being one of the early pioneers in this, and all other researchers that actually set the stage for current and future research. Next slide, please. I also, again, we have Megan Carey with us. I'll introduce in just a moment. But we're thrilled that the GCM Foundation and GCAC has partnered with the National Society of Genetic Counselors. We started working together, I think 9-10 months ago on this. And you would actually see that all of the website, all the marketing material that you see, the webinar deck, everything that we've done, we actually partnered with NSGC and their marketing team, and are thrilled with the job that they're doing. We're thrilled with the partnerships. We definitely want to thank them. Next slide, please. And to tell us a little more tonight, because a lot of us probably say, well, what are genetic counselors? What is NSGC? So to give us a little more about genetic counselors, the National Society of Genetic Counselors, give us more information, is the executive director, Megan Carey. I won't go into detail, but she's got 20 years experience in association management. I think 13 as executive director. Megan, you can nod. I don't know if people could see you or not. Yeah. As the executive director, I think 13 of NSGC. So she's done this for a long time, understands the field well. Megan earned her Certified Association Executive Certification in 2019. She holds a master's in social work and social policy and planning, and a bachelor's degree in English and literature from the school up north. So Megan, take it away, and thanks so much for your partnership on this. We're happy to have you.
Thanks so much, Greg. We're really happy to be partnering with DCM Foundation and GCAC on this project, and we're really excited to see it come to fruition. Next slide, please. So there's a lot here about NSGC, and essentially NSGC is the Professional Association for Genetic Counselors, and we focus on education, networking, resources and partnerships such as this one that support genetic counselors in their practice, and then in turn help them support their patients. We also help others understand the important role that genetic counselors can play in their healthcare. It's still a fairly under-recognized field in some ways. So a lot of what we do is focused around awareness of genetic counselors and how they can really help you and help your physicians. So you can see our mission and vision here. And really at the heart of it, we're about ensuring that genetic services are well integrated into healthcare, because that will improve everyone's health. Next slide, please. So if you're not familiar with genetic counselors work with you and your doctor to help you understand any genetic risks that you might have for certain conditions or diseases based on your detailed family history. Genetic counselors take a very detailed family history. It goes a little deeper than a typical healthcare provider might take, and they ask specific questions and look for patterns that may not be evident from the typical family history that you may get at your physician's office. They also talk to you about your concerns, your health challenges, and any questions you have about genetic testing to help determine whether it might be a good choice for you. And then they walk you through testing options and talk to you about what you may and may not learn from genetic testing. So they want to ensure that you are fully prepared for the information that you might receive and support you through that. And then they also talk to you about what those results might mean, not only for you, but also for your family. Since it is a genetic test, it can have implications for others in your family. Not everybody is as ready for information as other people are. And so that's another part of the conversation that they can help you think through on your own, and then also determine a plan for if you do receive a result that might need to be shared with other members of your family. Next slide, please. Sorry, I have a little dog whining outside my door. So the role of genetic counselors in cardiomyopathy genetics, they work hand in hand with your cardiologist. And again, they collect that detailed patient and family medical history that's very specific to cardiac conditions. And they assess your risk for cardiovascular disease, including cardiomyopathy. So these are really specialized genetic counselors that are looking at your family history for genetic conditions in any area, but also very specifically in this area. And so then they do talk to you about tests that are available, how that information might impact you and your family. And they make recommendations then for family screening and provide psychosocial support, both before and after testing. And that can be for you and also for other members of your family. So some patients choose to engage their family before they even undergo testing because there are implications that they want to have that all out on the table before they get that test result. Next slide, please. So if you haven't met with a genetic counselor, you might wonder what that's going to be like. So when you do meet with a genetic counselor after genetic testing to discuss a result, they'll take you through the result and what the results mean. Most genetic tests are not necessarily a straightforward yes or no answer. A lot of them have risk scores, and they will walk through what that risk means, especially in relation to your other health history. They'll explain to you how the test results may impact the medical care that you get moving forward. Again, they work very closely with your cardiologist, so they're well experienced in what this might look like moving forward. And often they've talked to your physician beforehand, so they can give you that information. They then circle back and talk to your doctor about next steps and help coordinate that care, and then discuss implications for your family members. And if you're interested, help you develop a plan for informing family members that you've been tested and what those results might mean. I saw a quote, and I can't remember where I found it. It's probably in some of the materials since we've been working on this partnership, but according to a patient, cardiovascular genetic counselors are, quote, translators, logistics managers, sources of information, coaches, encouragers, guides, and advocates in the foreign lands of a potentially deadly genetic condition. So they really are there to support you all through your journey and beyond testing. Many patients have years-long relationships with your genetic counselors, and also new genes are being discovered all the time. So even if you don't get a result that's definitive now, a genetic counselor can also recontact you in the future if there might be a test that's applicable to you or someone in your family. Next slide, please. And thank you for having me today.
Thanks so much, Megan. Thank you.
Great, and I'll take it from here. Thank you, Megan. We really appreciate your partnership and your team's amazing work over these past number of months. Next, we're going to share a couple of patient stories we thought was really important for you folks to hear. Two stories of people who have genetic cardiomyopathy. We know genetic cardiomyopathy testing can save lives. And so these two guest speakers learned about their condition and then found out it was caused by a genetic mutation. And so we're going to hear a little bit about their stories and the importance of testing and how it potentially saved not only their lives, but also the lives of their loved ones. So first, we're going to hear from Stephanie Fallon and then Lance Murphy. Both are DCM patients. Next slide. So first up is Stephanie Fallon. Stephanie couldn't be with us live this evening, so we do have a recording from her, and she'll tell her story in a moment. But she learned through genetic testing that she has the MYH7 gene, which can cause and did cause her dilated cardiomyopathy. This is Stephanie in the lower left. The middle is Stephanie with her 3 grown children and a reindeer, evidently. And in the lower right is Stephanie with her husband and their 3 grandchildren and a little dog. Next slide. So here I interviewed Stephanie about if she could tell us the story of how she learned first that she had dilated cardiomyopathy, and then how she and her family came to be genetically tested. So let's play this video.
I found out when I was 15 years old. I was trying out for the tennis team and I couldn't run the laps like all the other kids. So they sent me up to the nurse and she heard something. So I ended up going to a cardiologist and they diagnosed me with dilated cardiomyopathy. They thought it was from my braces because back then they thought it was all viral. And so I had my braces taken off and I was still pretty sick. The thing they had at the time was digoxin. So they put me on that and gave me 5 years to live. Well, I'm still here. I'm 55 years old and I've had 3 children, 2 of which have dilated cardiomyopathy and were pretty sick. So in 2012, they decided to genetically test me and I came back with the MYH7 mutation. So they tested the 2 girls and they have the same mutation. So they thought that if they put the girls on the same medicine I was on, because by then beta blockers and ACE inhibitors and everything came out, that hopefully they would do as well as I did. And they did. So the 2 girls, one's 35 and one's 28. So I think that getting the decision to get genetically tested, I think was a positive thing because then the doctors could treat us as a whole and see if that would make any of us better. And it has. My youngest daughter had 9%. And that's kind of when she was in the hospital for months. And then they, back then they couldn't figure out how to give her medicine. So we had to drip it in her mouth because it was too strong going through the IV. And she did pretty good. And when we came home, she had about 15%. And then she still only has like 30%, if that, but she's doing good. She's really doing good. She works full time and adopting a baby. So we're looking forward to that. So the lowest I ever got was 23%. And I stayed there for a while. That was after I had my third child. They never told me I shouldn't have had children because they didn't know back then. But and then as the medicine came out, like, the Entrestos and all that stuff, they put me on it. And that has done wonders for me. And also my two girls are on it also. The decision I made to get everyone genetically tested, I think, was the best decision I made, because it has saved myself and my children, and we are being treated as a whole. And I think it has really helped.
Wonderful. I just want to give a huge thanks to Stephanie. Stephanie also runs 2 Facebook groups for DCM patients, a private group and a public group. So if you are a DCM patient and you're not aware of that, you may want to check that out. But Stephanie does a great job, and we're so thankful she's still here. And so that, you'll only live 5 years. Thank goodness that was not true. So thank you, Stephanie. Next up, we have Lance Murphy, and Lance is a board member of the DCM Foundation. We're thrilled to have him on the board, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his story of genetic cardiomyopathy. And this, Lance, this is a beautiful picture you have here. What a gorgeous family you have. So if you could tell us a little bit about how you first learned you have DCM, and why and how you came to be genetically tested. And if you want to unmute, that would be perfect. There we go.
Great. Thank you, Jayanne. And just a moment to thank Jayanne, everyone. She's worked really hard on this. And
Lance, could you unmute yourself? Sorry, that just went back to mute.
keep unmuting myself over and over again.
You're good now.
And without communication, people don't learn. So this webinar in particular, and to lead off GCAC and the other efforts that Greg and other members of the board are involved in, have taught me a ton as a patient. So to recount my story, I kind of want to go through it chronologically. First thing that happened was about 9 months before I was diagnosed, I went to my family practitioner. I had a checkup. She said, I see something on your EKG. I'm going to send you to see a cardiologist. So I went to see a cardiologist. He did a physical exam of me, did not do an echocardiogram, which is an ultrasound of your heart. And he said, you're fine. Your blood pressure's fine. Everything's good. You're good. You're good to go. So I left. And then about 9 months later, I was hiking up a mountain in Arizona, and I felt tightness in my chest. And I told my wife, I don't feel right. We went back home. We live here in Houston, Texas. Went back home, and I went to see my doc, and she said, well, you're getting over a virus. So chances are you've got, some pneumonia, maybe fluid in your lungs. We should go and have a chest x-ray done. I went and I had the chest x-ray done, and it came back with me having an enlarged heart. And it took me about a month to get in to see a cardiologist. And I went in to see a cardiologist, and kind of the same thing happened 9 months prior. I went in on a Tuesday. I do the echocardiogram. Of course, they don't have the results back yet. They do the physical exam. Blood pressure is normal, no swelling anywhere, like in your legs, which is one of the key things that they see a lot of times with heart failure. And you're fine. Go home. So I did. And then I looked down on Friday, which was, 3 days later. My phone's blowing up on a Friday afternoon multiple times. So I pick it up, and it's the cardiologist, and he tells me, I just looked at your echo and you're not fine. You heard others mention here, Stephanie mentioned a number, and that number is ejection fraction. And ejection fraction, for those of you that are new, means how much blood is ejected from your heart in any given beat. And a normal percentage is 50 to 70. So my percentage, he informed me, was 18, which, you know, 20 is kind of the demarcation line for a heart transplant. So he said, we need you to come into the hospital, be here Monday morning. We'll do a series of different tests. They did what's called a catheterization procedure. So they can go into your wrist, they can go into your neck, and run wires into your heart and measure your ejection fraction more specifically. And that's what they did. And I was in heart failure, and, you know, thus began the process of all of the stuff. And I know many of you on this call are going through some of it right now. The emotional process that comes with dealing with the fact that you've been diagnosed with this. As you can see from the picture, I have 2 small kids. You know, you immediately start thinking about all this stuff, and you go to the internet. And the internet, I will tell you, in terms of doing research, is not your friend, because it's old and dated information, and will tell you that without the current pharmacological interventions, what mortality looks like for someone with heart failure. And the numbers, I think, are skewed because it doesn't accurately tell you what the numbers are today. But it was a process after that of putting the pieces of the puzzle together. My sister had been diagnosed with heart failure 18 months before me. And I thought that, she had gotten sick and was diagnosed with that. I couldn't see the correlation. And then I started talking to family members, and my mom, who had a host of different issues, but also had heart failure. Now I've got the 3, and I'm triangulating, and I'm like, okay, well, there's 3 of us. And then I called my aunt. I talked to my aunt. My grandfather died of lymphoma, but come to find out he had retired early from his job at 58 years old because he had heart failure. So now it's my grandfather, my mom, me, my sister, and I can see that clearly there's a pattern. And at this point, this was, 4 years ago, they had just started genetically testing people for different cardiomyopathies. So I enrolled in a study. That study took a long time to get me the results. So then I just went to Invitae, which is a partner of ours on the board, and I paid for my own test and for my kids to get tested. And I was sent back the results that showed that I have the truncating titin protein. Not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but the largest protein in your body from a DNA perspective is called titin, Titin. And that gene is responsible for about 25% of the diagnosed dilated cardiomyopathy cases. So once I found that I had it, I had to get my kids tested. My other siblings got tested. We really kind of went and did the whole family, and the gene is pervasive. And fortunately enough, the pharmacological interventions associated with my specific genetic defect are helpful and helped kind of put my heart back together again. So my heart, what they say is that it recovered. I'm not healed from the disease, but my ejection fraction is now normal in that 55 to 70 range. I think it's around 58 to 60. And my heart beats at, normal efficiency. And these medications that they put me on were very, very helpful. So it was helpful to know what my specific genetic issue was, because then they could treat me, right? Additionally, in the beginning, my heart hadn't responded immediately. So they came in and they put in an ICD, and Greg mentioned an ICD earlier. And an ICD is an implantable cardiac device. It's a defibrillator. And in my case, they put it on my rib cage. But what it is, if you've ever seen the paddles that they rub together, that they stick on you and shock you, that's what an ICD is. And it's a device that can save your life. And my particular genetic issue is prone to arrhythmias. What are arrhythmias? Arrhythmias are irregular heartbeats that can cause heart attacks and other issues. So in knowing that, I'm susceptible, having this ICD is helpful because it allowed my electrophysiologist, which is the one that the doctor that studies your electric function of your heart. My electrophysiologist said that he would keep the ICD, even though my heart is recovered, he would keep the ICD, because of my specific genetic issue. So what I can tell you is now that genetic testing is readily available, you should absolutely consider it. My kids now get echoes once a year. Keep an eye on them to make sure that they're progressing. It's helped me talk to them about things like diet and exercise and, all the things associated with having, a heart healthy life. But I was so excited to see GCAC roll out with the foundation, because when I was diagnosed, none of this stuff, and this was just 4 years ago, really existed in the conversation. So I think we're helping, expand and broaden on this conversation. And given that it's such a large part of dilated cardiomyopathy and, ultimately, heart failure or the recovery thereof, it's an important thing to consider and to get tested. So thanks everybody for allowing me a few minutes, and I appreciate it.
Lance, thank you so much for sharing your story. You made some really incredibly important points there. And we're so glad that you were properly diagnosed and that you're doing so well. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Lance. We really appreciate it, and all your work on the board. Wonderful. If we can go back to the deck now, and I will hand things back over to Greg. And I think we're going to do one more poll. Greg, it's all yours.
Yes, great, thanks. Next slide, please. So we got a poll. The poll is, have you had genetic cardiomyopathy testing? The answers are yes, no, or no, but I'm planning on it. Justine, do you mind launching the poll? And I've got some interesting theories here, which we'll talk about in a second.
I think they're going to be proven out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I do think so. Interesting.
Justine, if you could show the results, please. I think we're good. So it's interesting. So, and I thought this would happen. So you heard me say before about 1% of people get genetic testing. This says 49% of people get genetic testing. And we've actually done this poll before, and we've seen very similar numbers. And so, next slide, please. So what does this mean? It basically means that people involved come to these webinars, people that are involved in groups like ours, honestly tend to be in the know more. Because of the website, because whether it's hypertrophic, children, SADS, any of the different groups, women heart, any of the groups that we're working with, men at hearts, you tend to understand the disease a lot better. And so it doesn't, I suspected we would see something like 40 to 50%. But what this means, though, is that the folks in this webinar, especially the patients, you guys are in the know. You understand this. 50% of you, 50% don't. And I think you'll learn more and hope to get genetically tested in the very near future. But what can you do and how can you help GCAC? We need advocates and ambassadors to go out. Again, realizing that the vast majority of patients, cardiomyopathy patients, don't get genetically tested, don't know they should, don't understand. So we're going to show you a little bit later on the website. And then when JN sends the recording tomorrow, there'll actually be links of, we call them infographics or info sheets, one you can share with your family or other patients, and one you can share with medical providers. So the fact that we have a fairly sophisticated audience here, we need your help. We need you to go out and spread the word to patients, families, Facebook groups, and your doctors. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go in for a few minutes, show you some key points of the website. Again, beautiful website that NSGC's marketing team put together. I am going to share my screen now. And hopefully it'll work. Aha, can everybody see my screen? Everybody's got the screen, great. So this is our website. It's at www.geneticcardiomyopathy.org. It's a simple site, and I'm just going to explain some of the things about this. So we've got about, resources, testing, important conversations are the 4 main topic areas. About, it tells a little bit more about the campaign. We learn through about genetic cardiomyopathy. What is genetic cardiomyopathy? And then we certainly highlight our partners and sponsors at the same time. And we even have links to our partners and sponsors' websites so that you can learn more, because many of them have a lot of information on different types of cardiomyopathy and different types of genetic cardiomyopathy information. We then have the resources section. And I think something really important is the support for your journey, which I will click on now, which basically talks about 4 different areas. First, should I get genetic testing? So there's some basic information on getting genetically tested. And what this boils down to, and again, I'm not a doctor, there are 10-page answers to this question, who should get genetically tested? But essentially, if you have been diagnosed with cardiomyopathy and it was not caused by a heart attack or coronary artery disease, you should consider, or you should get genetic testing. And basically, the American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology, it all suggests that if you don't, your cardiomyopathy was not caused by, and I'm simplifying it. I apologize, cardiologists and genetic counselors, but you should get if you're not, if you didn't have a heart attack or coronary artery disease. So should I get genetic testing? Each of the areas has a nice little video that is actually me. I won't go through it. The second test about support for your journey talks about the pros and cons of getting genetic testing. It's important that you understand both. The pros, in my opinion, dramatically outweigh the cons, but there are some things you need to consider before genetic testing. And actually getting genetic testing, which will go on just a second, on getting tested. And again, as we suggest and Megan suggested, when you get genetically tested, when you get the results, you should always have a debrief with a genetic counselor. These are complicated tests that give very complicated answers that are virtually impossible to interpret on your own. You shouldn't. Or by a non-qualified person that doesn't understand genetics and cardiomyopathy. Very, very important. And again, understanding your results and next steps, which your genetic counselor will talk about. Very, very important on what do I do? What do I do next? So I'll go back up, and we're going to actually talk about testing, getting tested. One of the things that we want to say is that people think that getting genetically tested costs thousands and thousands of dollars. It used to. It doesn't anymore. In many instances, insurance, I think in most instances, insurance, if you've been diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, insurance will pay for it, health insurance. Not all the time. You have to check with your particular insurance. And it also can, and many times do, pay for genetic counseling services too. So that's important, but really max out of pocket may only be $500, $600, $700 for you if for some reason insurance does not pay, or you don't have insurance. What we have set up on getting tested is a link. We have one group that we're working with right now. We hope to have several more to put together, but we work with a company called Genome Medical, which actually is a genetic counseling company that also can do the genetic testing with you. So if you're interested in getting genetic testing, click on the link. You can click on Genome Medical's website and set up having an initial consultation with a genetic counselor that then can decide, can talk to you about costs, talk to you about insurance paying, whether you need testing or not, and they can actually order the test for you. So very exciting about that. Very excited about that. So hold on just a second here. Let me go back. And we also want to talk about something that we talked before on additional resources. So another thing that we see and I have conversations daily, weekly, at least weekly with patients, is that, in my personal opinion, not the opinion of the DCM Foundation, GCAC, or the medical community maybe, my belief is, and this is not coming up, is it? Hold on. Okay, let me see. I need to, all right, I'm gonna need, let me do something here real quick. I apologize. I am trying to, so my bar at the top, Justine, if you could help me, is blocking my ability to click on, can I put the bar at the bottom?
Yes, you should be able to just grab a hold of the bar and drop it down.
Perfect. Thank you. That's why we have it. Justine. So thank you very much. So we've actually got a link on helping, again, I believe that getting expert care is great, and the average cardiologist tends not to be real equipped or real knowledgeable about genetic cardiomyopathy. And I think that getting the best care is really, really important. Again, have these conversations weekly with people. So 3 quick ways that you can do it is look for a university or academic medical center near you. You can just type in a Google search, heart failure centers near me. Probably will bring up a university or academic center. That's a good place to go. You can also do type in medical centers that perform heart transplants near me, and they will give you a list. They tend to be well equipped to deal with heart failure. And we even have a government listing here that is real simple to use. And the last thing, there's a group we work with called MediFind that you can actually type your, and we have instructions here, can type your types of cardiomyopathy, look for a geographic radius around you, and to find expert care. Now, we are not endorsing any one institution. We are not endorsing any one doctor. But I do know that if you have cardiomyopathy, especially genetic cardiomyopathy, getting the right care is really, really important. And then the last thing I want to show you before we move on is we have 2 infographics that you can share, download, email, print out, give to people. One is talking about genetic cardiomyopathy to your family, your friends, and other patients. Here this is. And it's actually got a link to our website. And then the last thing is we also have one for your doctor. Again, from conversations I have almost daily with patients, most doctors, cardiologists don't understand genetics and cardiomyopathy. And so it's really, really important that you get to the right person, the right care. Even though AHA, ACC, HFSA guidelines as of 2022 recommend that if you have non-ischemic, which I say is no heart attack, no coronary disease, you should be tested. And if you have been identified as having genetic cardiomyopathy, first-degree relatives should also be tested. But it's not happening. It's starting to happen, but we want you to go out, talk to people, make noise about that, visit the website, learn, and let people learn about genetic cardiomyopathy. Justine, could you put the deck up, please?
And just a real quick note, this new website does not replace the DCM Foundation website. We had a question about that. This is a new and separate endeavor, although affiliated. So.
Yes, next slide, please. And so we're not done. We're going a little bit late. We'll have just a few minutes for questions. We might be able to answer your questions or stay a little bit late if anyone is interested. I'm willing to do so. But not only do we have our US campaign kicking off today, but at the end of June, we're having a global campaign being kicked off for GCAC that is being run and put together by our wonderful friends and partner at Global Heart Hub. And here is Neil Johnson, Executive Director of Global Heart Hub, to tell us more about that.
I'm Neil Johnson from the Global Heart Hub. As a patient community, we're delighted to support the US Cardiomyopathy Awareness Campaign, which aims to help those living with cardiomyopathy and their families better understand the role of genetics in their diagnosis. In June this year, we will promote the campaign internationally, when it will be translated into 8 languages and delivered across 26 countries. The Global Heart Hub is the first global non-profit alliance of heart patient groups, aiming to provide a voice for those living with or affected by cardiovascular diseases. As an international alliance of heart patient groups, we work across a number of areas, including cardiomyopathy and heart failure, where we currently have representation from 51 patient associations across 26 countries. And they meet regularly to plan and implement a range of projects addressing the key challenges from a patient perspective, living with cardiomyopathy or heart failure. The DCM Foundation is one of our affiliate organizations, and we're delighted to engage with Greg and Jeanne on cardiomyopathy and heart failure related activities. Last year, our Cardiomyopathy Patient Council ran a first ever international awareness campaign, which generated over 6.5 million opportunities to see our campaign messages across social channels in 9 countries. And it was a great example of how the patient voice can be strengthened when patient groups work together and partner on these activities. Raising awareness of the importance of being genetically tested if you have received a diagnosis of cardiomyopathy is hugely important for family and relatives. For this reason, we hope to encourage more and more people to take the important step of getting genetically tested. So can I thank you for helping us spread this message on the importance of genetic testing for those with a diagnosis of cardiomyopathy. And let's make this a message that makes a real difference to people all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. And we are just thrilled to have Global Heart Hub. Again, this is going to be in 51 organizations, 60 organizations globally. This campaign, 8 languages, I think 21 countries, 22 countries. So we're very, very excited about our partnership. So thank you. Jeanne?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you to all of our speakers tonight. This is really incredible. We have a number of questions coming in, and so we are going to have Megan and Greg on for questions tonight. Let's get
stick on too, maybe in case there's some patient questions. Maybe.
Sure. Yeah. Let's
And
see.
are you okay to go to like 7:10? Everybody okay to go 7:10 if we is that good? So okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, guys. So we have a number of questions coming in. First is, my cardiologist recommended against getting genetically tested. What should I do? Greg, you want to take this?
Click on the link provided on the website, talk to a genetic counselor, and get genetic testing. I hear this all the time. Again, this is my opinion, not, but I hear this all the time. Most cardiologists don't really understand this. It's changing. And there's actually, from the ACC meeting this weekend, there was actually a report that came out from it that I saw Monday, specific on hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and really talked about only 2.5% of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy patients get genetically tested. It leads dilated cardiomyopathy in other areas because I think hypertrophic has been studied more, and there are less genes involved in hypertrophy. But it's medically proven, it's scientifically research proven that they're not getting tested. They should. American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology saying get tested. So if your doctor doesn't recommend it, you should always follow doctor's orders, but you should press the doctor. They may not understand it or have the facilities. If they don't, click on the website, go to Genome Medical, have a conversation with a genetic counselor, and if they think it's appropriate, then get tested.
Wonderful. Thank you. A lot of questions about what's a good time or age to be genetically tested. Megan, do you want to take that one? I guess it depends on the situation, of course, but.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the question, and most of my answers are going to be talk to a genetic counselor who can help you work through some of these questions. It depends on your family circumstances, whether you're planning to have children, whether you already have children, whether you're not planning to have children, but there are other family members who may be showing signs or symptoms of cardiomyopathy. So I don't think that there's any one best age, but there could be family circumstances individual to you and your family that may lead to you wanting to think about doing it at a specific time. But again, a genetic counselor would help you work through all of those questions. They know what to ask to help you make those decisions.
Wonderful. And I know we, thank you, Megan. We had a specific question for Lance, if you're comfortable answering. At what age were your children genetically tested?
Yes, so would have been what, 4 years ago. So 6 and 11.
Okay, wonderful. And it depends on the particular scenario, but certainly talk to your doctor, talk to your pediatrician, and your cardiologist. I also wanted to mention.
And Jan, maybe
Yeah.
talk to more than one doctor.
Oh,
right?
of course, yes.
Because I talked to one doctor and completely missed everything, right? And had that doctor caught my issue, might have changed things a lot. And then if you do get a genetic test and it comes back and you see a genetic marker that will cause cardiomyopathy, my recommendation would be, all it is a saliva swab, right? I mean, you can get a kid tested at 2.
Yes.
You can get anybody tested.
Yep.
Right. So it's going to do is allow for your doctors to determine what the protocol will be to make sure that they are okay on a go-forward basis.
Absolutely. And I would redirect people to go to the dcmfoundation.org website. We have Find a Cardiomyopathy Specialist. It's really important. There's several ways on there. There's a tool called MediFind on there where you can type in your zip code and so forth and your condition and find specialists near you. There's also a website, findageneticcounselor.com, which is put out by the National Society of Genetic Counselors, where you again can search by zip code and specialty. So I'll include those actually in the follow-up email that I will send to everyone first thing tomorrow. Next question, we've had several questions related to, what is the cost and does insurance cover this type of testing? And then one other question was related to having Medicare and if Medicare covers it. Who would like to take that?
Yeah, Megan, I like to put you on the hot seat. So if you're wrong, you'll get the wrath of people instead of me.
Yeah, I'm not going to give a very satisfying answer. I think it depends. The coverage varies so much between payers that this is another question that you'd want to talk to your physician's office about. They can tell you. What I can say is that Medicare will not, unfortunately, cover the cost of a genetic counselor visit. We're currently pursuing legislation to change that and get genetic counselors recognized as providers under Medicare, but the testing may be covered. So
what I've heard is about 75% of testing is covered and about 50% of genetic counseling is covered, round numbers. But the nice thing is, I think, again, if your physician, cardiologist has those capabilities, you can ask them. If they don't or won't get you tested, go to Genome Medical and they can tell you, check to see if insurance will pay for testing, genetic counseling, and really, really important. So.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. Let's see. So next question. I'm just filtering through a bunch here. There are a bunch of questions that are related to, I had genetic testing a number of years ago, like 5 years ago, 8 years ago, and was told there was no genetic component to my cardiomyopathy. Has testing been refined? How often should people get genetic testing done? And Megan, I'm going to ask you that one, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, and again, I'll just say I am not a genetic counselor, so none of this is medical advice, but I just want to make that clear. But there are new discoveries all the time. And so this is where a relationship with a genetic counselor can be helpful. If you contact a genetic counselor, they'll be able to tell you if something has changed that would warrant retest or another test. They're not going to probably retest you with the same test, but there may be a new test available. So they'll review your prior testing results, again, look at your family history and determine if there might be something available now that could give you more information. And that's where, and even if you see a genetic counselor and there isn't a test that would be really relevant for you right now, they're always on the pulse of new tests available. And so that relationship can be really beneficial, and they could reach out to you when something might be more applicable for you. You can check in with them. But there's not necessarily like a schedule of testing that would be advisable. It's highly variable.
Yeah. And to get back to the cost, I don't think we answered that. Again, like our medical and healthcare system in the United States, there's never a straight answer to anything, right? But on cost, what our research has found, and again, if you reach out to Genomedical or anybody else, if you pay out of pocket and there's no insurance, genetic counseling and testing, you're probably looking at $500-600. Don't quote me, ask them up front, but it's not 5,000, it's not 10,000. It's a fairly reasonable cost these days. So, but certainly don't quote me on that, and always ask when you're reaching out to somebody what the cost will be and if insurance pays. So.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Let's see. We have a few questions about life insurance and people who found they have a genetic mutation and then went to apply for life insurance and were not able to get it. Greg, can you speak to that a little bit? It's a difficult, order of things.
It is, and that's a key con on the pros and cons of genetic testing. So what I would recommend is what we recommend is the two types of insurance that can discriminate. Health insurance cannot discriminate now, but life insurance and long-term care insurance can discriminate against negative genetic tests or positive genetic tests. The one thing, though, you have to realize, though, if we're talking mainly about part of the group we're talking about is diagnosed cardiomyopathy patients, right? So if you've been diagnosed with cardiomyopathy and you try to get insurance, long-term care life insurance, it's going to be tough, whether you have the genetic positive test. So if you're diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, you're in a tough situation. So I don't think it'll affect life insurance or long-term care insurance because they're going to have that information that's going to count against you, right? But if you haven't been diagnosed, you're looking at family members, I would consult your insurance, whoever your insurance agent is, and say, we're thinking about this, we suspect it, what do we do? And what we did is, we made sure we bound life insurance before we took the tests, again, just to make sure that if the test came back positive, we didn't know. So, but reach out to your reach out to your insurance agent and let them know what's going on, and they'll properly advise you.
And to that end, Greg, there's also, there are insurance companies that will issue permanent life insurance policies on kids. So if you and your sibling or your mom or whatever have a specific, gene or genetic defect, before you get your kids tested, they won't be able to get life insurance if it comes back and they have the gene or the genetic defect. So if you want to get for later in life, and a permanent life insurance policy can go all the way through, you continue to fund it, but it's for kids, it's something to look at as well.
Thank you. That's great information.
Absolutely. So this one is for Megan. What could you tell me about what I might expect to experience when I go to my first genetic counseling appointment? So I'm assuming this is done like via Zoom, or I'm assuming.
Yeah, it can be a Zoom appointment. It could be an in-person appointment. So it just depends on if you're in a location where there's a genetic counselor that's easily accessible to you. But again, a lot of appointments are on Zoom. And so the genetic counselor may ask you to come with some information about your family history so that you have that sort of at the ready. They may ask you some questions in advance so that you are prepared for the appointment. Or they may just walk you through a series of questions and collect a pretty detailed family history from you. They know the questions to ask. They know questions to give you to ask if more information is needed. They'll also look at your medical history and see, you know, kind of what information that you've gleaned so far. And then they'll put all of that together and really talk to you about options. So they'll review if there's tests available that may make sense to get you some sort of genetic diagnosis. They'll talk to you about the implications of those tests, like what you may or may not learn, how you might feel about the nature of the information that you might learn and the certainty of that information. They'll get to know you and your family situation and talk you through what those implications might be. So it's really a discussion. It's less like sitting in a doctor's office wearing a gown, like you're actually meeting with someone and just having a very open discussion about all of this information. There's no pressure to do anything in that first appointment. So it's really sort of an exploration to help you decide what you want to do as the next step.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Justine does have a hard stop, so so we're going to need to wrap it up tonight. But I want to thank everyone for all of your input tonight. Thank you all for the questions, everyone who's participated. If we can go back to the deck, and we'll just wrap up. So we just have a couple more slides here. And again, thank you so much to our generous sponsors whose names you see there on the screen, without whose support we could not do this. They've been incredibly helpful, many, many meetings, many hours. Thank you to everyone involved. Next slide. People were asking to learn more about genetic cardiomyopathy. This is the website you want to go to, geneticcardiomyopathy.org. I will send an email tomorrow with additional information with links. Please sign up to receive updates and follow us on our social media channels. And next. And please do save the date for the next webinar. This will be about DCM Foundation's Healthy Together Wellness Program. This is for any cardiomyopathy patients. It will be held April 19th from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can learn more and register at our website, dcmfoundation.org. Sorry to have wrapped it up so quickly, but I just want to thank everyone who's been a part of this tonight and leading up to tonight. I mean, there are so many organizations, so many people, so many conversations. I have to say, this has really been one of the joys of my career. I was telling my husband last night, just so incredibly thankful to be a part of all of this, and thankful for everyone involved. So again, go to geneticcardiomyopathy.org, click around, download those flyers, hand them out to your friends and family. Please bring them to your doctor's appointments and your medical providers and get the word out. This is all about awareness. Get the word out, spread the word on social media, and together we can help save more lives. So thank you guys so much, and stay tuned for more webinars later in the year, and more information will be forthcoming. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Lance, Justine, Greg. Have a great night. Thank you to all the participants, and thanks for the great questions. Take care now. Bye-bye.